All right, kids, this past Mother's Day, a meme kept popping up on the internet, and it went a little something like this.
Mother's Day is the day when the least amount of crime is committed in the United States, and I think that says a lot about how many moms are out there committing crimes but can't today because they're at brunch with their kids, you know?
That, along with infographics which said the exact same thing, came from a tweet posted in May of 2020 by someone named Finn. Now, is it true that crime is at its lowest on Mother's Day? No. No, it's not. That's been fact checked. And we all know that wives commit crime when husbands let the family cat sleep on human mom's black jacket and get fur all over it accidentally repeatedly. She's never done anything wrong. Really, moms might be more likely to be on the receiving end of domestic violence on Mother's Day. And actually, Finn, the Twitter user, told Snopes that he deleted the original joke after he became, quote, educated on the topic of mothers who are imprisoned and the effect that has not only on them, but their families. A year later, Finn posted this Mother's Day message about mothers who are in jail/prison with a thread to go along with it. I'll get back to this in a bit. But first, I know Father's Day was this past Sunday, and I realized that men make up most of my audience, whatever that's about. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge dads and for the guys to feel seen before I start calling politicians out of their name.
I'm no punk bitch. I ain't no punk bitch neither. I'm no punk bitch. Knock that head off.
With that said, crime, homicides in particular, is decreasing all over the country. And I don't know how many people are aware of it. I am, because I do this for a living, and I never hear Democrats boast about it either. However, the FBI Quarterly Uniform Crime Report published in March indicates a widespread decrease in violent crime during 2023 compared to the previous year, as well as a 13% decline in homicides relative to 2022. And murders are down 18% in New York City and 24% in Washington, D.C. so far in 2024, according to police data. On the other hand, Republicans have told us for years now that we need to defund the Federal Bureau of Investigation because we can't trust them until their stats can be used to uphold the myth of black on black crime. Then it's okay. Meanwhile, according to ABC News, Oreo Sonia Morris, who says she was once a Democrat and is now a self-described black conservative Republican and a supporter of former President Donald Trump, and who felt compelled to run for Congress as a conservative Republican in 2022 by issues underlying crime, said this about U.S. stats showing that violent crime is dramatically falling. I don't believe it. Plain and simple, I don't believe it because we're experiencing different results. She would go on to say, you can always find a statistic for your side, but the average person knows that that is not the case. It's almost like you're lulling the people into a false sense of security when the experience is far different. And her Führer, King Trump, regularly spews false claims about the Big Apple and Chocolate City. Quote, crime is rampant and out of control like never ever before. The suburban housewives actually like Donald Trump. You know why? Because I'm the one who's going to keep them safe. The GOP, its policies, its supporters, they have done little to nothing to get us here. These PABs are afraid to come where we're from. How are they going to help? They'll even try to censor you if you call them PABs. So today, we're going to talk to them about crime, perception versus reality, perspectives from large cities, along with suburban and rural areas, and the propaganda that fuels their disinformation. As you're about to see, feelings don't care about facts, the rule of law thing is deflection, and every lack of law and order accusation is projection. We'll focus on how cherry picking is bad business. See, an Datalytics sample, that's a New Orleans-based data analytics company focused on criminal justice, education, and the nonprofit sector, of almost 200 cities with varying population sizes, murder was down by 20.8%. In some large cities that happen to be ran by liberal mayors like Washington, D.C., New Orleans, Las Vegas, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Detroit, Columbus, Nashville, and Philadelphia, murder is down by more than 30%. That, per The Guardian. And did I hear Columbus? Let's start there. Here. Homicides in Columbus are down 58% so far in 2024 compared to the same period last year, one of the largest drops of any major U.S. city with publicly available data. The Columbus Division of Police recorded 22 murders this year through April 15th, per data shared with Axios, the lowest year-to-date total in at least 8 years. This is far below 2021 and 2023. Yet, As I alluded to earlier, there's a certain segment of the country that doesn't care what stat factor figure I put in this corner over here at a height where you can still see dearest sweet Delilah. The red state murder rate, studies that show that rural counties have more firearm deaths than big cities, surveys that show people believe crime is worse nationally but better locally, and proof that cities with Democrat mayors are also some of the safest cities don't matter when you can pin crime and the stigma that comes along with it on blue cities. For example, about 60 miles east of Columbus, there's a billboard that reads, "Columbus criminals, turn back now. Prison awaits you in Muskingum County. Zero tolerance for drugs, theft, and violence." When WOSU reached out to the company that owns the billboard asking who put that message up, they didn't hear back. WOSU also reported that the Zanesville Times-Recorder interviewed Muskingum County Sheriff Matthew Lutz about the billboard. Here he is looking like he always smells hand sanitizer before he uses it. Lutz told the newspaper that he wasn't surprised about the billboard. He said, quote, "Columbus drug dealers come here and sell all the time, although Muskingum County's own jail data doesn't back that up." At that time, there were 20 people in the Muskingum County jail for drug trafficking. Just 3 were from Franklin County. The rest were mostly from Muskingum County and 1 from another red county. Furthermore, the jail was holding 176 people for all crimes. Only 8 were from Columbus. You may already realize what I'm getting at before I tell you that Lutz made another claim. He said if you look at counties that border Columbus, you see that a lot of people from Columbus are in jail for drug trafficking. Again, the data from that month's jail registry didn't back that claim up either. In the month of May, there were 32 people in jail for drug trafficking in 6 county lockups neighboring Columbus. Only 4 people were from Columbus. So, Lutz, who I think became sheriff after running in the Republican primary, along with GOP PABs, try to give off an aura of tough on crime, rule of law, and justice, despite releasing murderers of a specific political ideology. It's interesting to see that, and then watch them attribute rises or spikes in crime to the other side of the aisle, saying Democrats are too distracted to prosecute criminals. Meanwhile, they're busy calling out a defenseless boogeyman, one that they created.
I mean, this is the kind of standard playbook where George Soros funds one of these prosecutors and, coastal elites come into Missouri and try to buy these offices, and they don't share Missouri values. Prosecutorial discretion means reviewing a police report to determine what the charge should be and whether there should be a charge, and ultimately what the disposition in the case should be. It's not authority to nullify the law, and yet that's what these Soros-backed prosecutors like Kim Gardner were doing. So
a lot to pick apart there. By Missouri values, does he mean pretending to be a part of the Midwest for the sake of culture, but historically siding with the South in order to, let's say, maintain heritage, not hate? That was Missouri Attorney General, Republican Andrew Bailey, talking to Ghostface Macaulay Culkin, Andrew Gowdy, on Fox News. He, and many on the right, talk about George Soros a lot. I'm not even going to touch that topic. Some More News has an episode about whether George Soros is behind everything we don't like. I'll include a link to that video in the description. Anyways, Bailey was also talking about Kim Gardner, the former St. Louis prosecutor who resigned from her position after keeping that job while attending nursing classes. Bailey sued Gardner as she collided with a huge scandal herself, a car crash caused by Daniel Riley, whose vehicle struck a car that pinned Janae Edmondson between another car. Edmondson, from Tennessee, was in St. Louis for a volleyball tournament and walking to her hotel downtown that night when police say Riley was going 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. Police say he didn't try to brake before the crash. 7 months prior to this, Daniel Riley was in court ready to go to trial for an armed robbery. According to 5 on Your Side, Riley's alleged victim was there, so were the witnesses, and so was the defense, but Kim Gardner's office wasn't ready, so her staff dismissed the charges and refiled the same day. Riley had been on house arrest with a GPS bracelet up until that point and was supposed to remain that way until his next day in court. He had also violated the terms of his GPS monitoring system more than 40 times. 5 days later, police say he struck a car that pinned Janae Edmondson, just 17 years old, where she had to have her legs amputated. And before I continue, this is clearly awful. I shouldn't even have to say that. This shouldn't have happened either, and should never happen again. This tragic story is also cherry picking on the part of Attorney General Daniel Bailey. A case like that was and is the exception, not the rule. And if you don't know what cherry picking is, it's that thing that too many of us do to prove a point or make a story more real or relevant. Helps bring stats, facts, and figures home for a lot of people. It's also a trick that can be used to convince a voting bloc that one instance of gross negligence is happening system-wide. I'm not even trying to defend Gardner, she can go, but saying progressive prosecutors and DAs are letting criminals flee scot-free and creating more crime like a Daniel Bailey claims it. If we're going to cherry pick, here's another story from St. Louis that lends itself to progressive criminal justice reform and policies.
Her name was Angel J. Brown. She was 55 years old, arrested by Brentwood PD, accused of shoplifting, brought here to the St. Louis County Jail. The county says 2 days later she was having seizures and they took her to a hospital where she died.
Just more proof that Missouri needs cash bail reform. Cherry picking. Easy. It would have been nice if Angel J. Brown could have bonded out, or even better, didn't have to remain behind bars simply due to the fact that she may not have had money. Seems like her true crime was maybe not being rich, a problem that the right could do something about, but no. And they actually hate when Dems try to address it. Speaking of bail reform, real quick, in 2019, New York ended the use of money bail for most cases involving misdemeanors and lower level felonies. Bail reform seeks to make release rather than detention the default in these cases. Bail reform is beneficial for both individuals and public safety because it addresses inequities in the criminal justice system. By reducing reliance on cash bail, reform efforts ensure that people are not detained solely because they cannot afford bail, promoting fairness and reducing unnecessary pretrial incarceration. That per the Brennan Center for Justice. And if you're wondering, Missouri changed court rules in 2019. Bail reform comes in many forms, including adopting risk assessments and or setting rules regarding their use, like in Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Montana, and New Jersey. Then there's abolishing cash bail for some or all crimes, such as Illinois, Maine, and New York. There is no evidence showing a connection between bail reform and rising crime rates. So, am I cherry picking with that last bit by citing lefty sources? Well, here's the example used by the Heritage Foundation in their lecture about what they call the Soros rogue prosecutor. Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, said, in Dem-led cities, crimes like shoplifting, smash and grab thefts, and looting from businesses, not to mention murder, shootings, and other violent crimes, are rampant. They added, businesses are suffering before pointing to Sneaker City in Seattle, where criminals broke the storefront windows twice a month and stole merchandise in broad daylight weekly. And I want you to remember this, there were no arrests, prosecutions, and no remedies. When you go to the articles that Heritage Foundation references, you'll see that Sneaker City had to move on from downtown Seattle, not just due to a crime spike, but a rent spike. Furthermore, the thieves had never been found. The police were looking for them. Whose fault is that? And are we going to blame the amount of police available in a precinct or their funding or lack thereof? Because here's the low clearance rate for something like burglary even before the pandemic began, when demands for bail reform, defunding the police, and George Soros weren't mentioned as much. The point is, the Heritage Foundation could do a better job at cherry picking. They tried. Honestly, can't believe I'm about to say this, but when politicians and pundits go on right-wing media in order to bring up George Soros and lie about problems in blue cities, I wish they all would handle it like Fox News.
Progressive district attorneys are anti-police, pro-criminal, and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros' money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this.
I was going to say you get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he spent?
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Okay.
When a news network doesn't want to get sued, again, it gets a little awkward. A politician like Newt Gingrich, whom I just showed, and Attorney General Andrew Bailey, and Fox News pundits favor getting rid of these progressive DAs and prosecutors so we can get back to charging and convicting people with crimes. Am I getting that right? Will that fix it? Ousting those they blame for spikes in crime since the year 2020? Then crime will decrease once more, I ask, as I prepare to cherry pick some information?
Since the day Brooke Jenkins took office, violent crime in San Francisco is up nearly 4%. And homicides specifically have gone up more than 7%. Just this year alone, robberies are up almost 15% compared to the same period last year and are higher than they were during the entirety of Boudin's tenure. And those viral smash and grabs that were rampant under Boudin, yeah, they're still happening on Jenkins's watch.
San Francisco needs to hold on. Weird flex that crime was still not great no matter who their district attorney is, but yeah, Chesa Boudin was recalled and removed, and when Brooke Jenkins became district attorney, violent crime went up. It's almost like there's more to the spike in crime since 2020 than district attorneys and prosecutors, police funding, officer availability, or general treatment and morale of law enforcement. I mean, do I have to show you this video of Sandra Dure, district attorney in upstate New York, who disregarded police orders after she was caught speeding? 55 into 35, by the way. She told officers that she was busy dealing with 3 murders that day and asked if they thought she really cared about going 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. Man, I'm glad she didn't crash into anybody. She needs to focus on her job. She is crime at this point. Is MAGA calling for her removal? No? Oh, she's one of them. Conservatives did the same blame game with the defund the police movement. They'll say crime spiked after major cities took money away from police departments, and as a result, precincts became demoralized and police left in droves. However, crime began to increase before that. And while cities like Chicago did cut its police budget by 3%, largely by eliminating vacant positions, and Los Angeles reduced spending on police by 5% overall, that's not a defunding. Not what that word means. And if that money, in turn, was used to deal with what causes crime, always seems to be missing from these discussions, debates, and discourses. Money taken from the vast majority of police departments was returned within 9 months. And it wasn't like every city who decreased police spending did so intentionally. After the pandemic, some cities didn't have money to give. Even with that, 26 of the 50 largest cities in America increased their police budgets in 2021, including Tampa, Fresno, and San Diego. And did crime spike there too? Sure did. Austin, New York City, and Minneapolis had the biggest budget cuts. Did they have the biggest spikes in crime? No. And by crime, I mean just homicide. The vast majority of other crimes during that time plateaued or decreased. The right has no intention of contending with the proliferation of guns or symptoms of poverty which lead to crime. The houselessness, lack of meaningful free education, mental health resources, gainful employment and livable wages, fatherlessness, and so on. How many times have we talked about all of this? Fathers and mothers have been and will be needlessly incarcerated without necessary policies that can help with crime. Bringing us back to where we started. Finn posted a new Mother's Day message after the first one went viral. Quote, "This Mother's Day, I think it's important to talk about a more serious issue that has just recently come to my attention today, and that is mothers who are in jail/prison. And as Snopes makes known, as the prison population in the United States skyrocketed since 1980, the number of incarcerated women has grown by more than 750%, at a rate twice that of men. The increase, according to criminologists, has been driven by a rise in the imprisonment of white women for property and drug-related crimes. And as the population has risen, so too has the number of children growing up with a mother or father behind bars. The toll it takes on children is often far more severe when the inmate is their mother. More than 60% of women in state prisons and nearly 80% of those in jail have minor children, and most are their primary caretaker. I want to add that even with the 30% spike in homicides after 2020, the murder rate was still way less than what it was in the late 80s, early 90s, but higher than what it was in 2019. I don't know what or who to attribute to things going back to normal, but President Joe Biden is taking credit and thanking the FBI and the Department of Justice. The Columbus Police Department was boasting about a decrease in murders here hours after a 13-year-old was killed. And you should know that the 2022 National Victimization Survey, conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, may say otherwise. And many of the numbers I've stated are from the first quarter of this year or the fourth quarter of 2023. Hopefully, the rest of this year will follow suit. And I can understand why there are many Americans who don't feel safe and sound in any city, let alone a dim city, particularly if they watch conservative media and broadcasting. But some communities continue to experience elevated crime levels or increases in certain crimes. Murders are up 9% in Los Angeles, 8% in St. Louis, and 23% in Denver this year compared to the start of 2023. Nationwide, 2023 third and fourth quarter FBI crime reports show motor vehicle thefts increasing. Black boys and men may never feel safe, and we know why. Hate crimes against Jews and Muslims have increased. Immigrants are still less likely to commit crime and be incarcerated than native-born white people. And all of these things will be used by the GOP to fear response people into voting for them. They have nothing else to offer. If nothing else, what I want you to take away from all that I've said is, don't be a PAB. We gonna be all right.
One thing I love about this narrative that conservatives try to push, every Democratic-run city is an open-air gun range, it's crime, everybody's getting shot, is that you can't then turn around and call liberals snowflakes because we live in these cities. You can't have it both ways. You can't turn around and then be the forward, tough Republican. No, you're scared. You just said it. Remember? This city's got you shaking in your fucking boots. The blue-haired barista that you're calling a liberal snowflake, she lives in the middle of this city. She walks her dog in the city. She takes the train at night. The train that got you shaking in your fucking boots. We're tougher than you. How are we the snowflakes when we live places that you won't even go? Who's the bitch now?